The news that swept across our nation this week, well, it's left us all profoundly shaken. I think that's fair to say. This isn't just another headline. It feels like a deeply unsettling moment that many of you are probably grappling with right now. A true test, perhaps, of what our country is becoming. So today, we're going to take a deep dive into this national tragedy, the assassination of Charlie Kirk on September 10th, 2025 at Utah Valley University. Our mission here is really to go beyond those raw headlines. We want to unpack the harrowing circumstances of his death, delve into who Charlie Kirk actually was, explore the immediate, frankly chaotic aftermath, and confront what this singular, shocking act of violence might mean for the future of American politics. It's a moment of profound sadness and concern, a stark reminder, maybe, of the fragile state of things. We want to help you understand how this happened and, crucially, the gravity of its implications for all of us.
Indeed. And this event, it didn't just expose the fault lines that were already there, did it? It felt like it immediately widened them. It revealed a new level of fragility in our shared public spaces and really amplified the intensity of political division in ways we're probably still just starting to process. We're going to look at the facts, as they've emerged so far and try to connect them to the broader picture of political discourse in America.
Yeah.
Especially as this tragedy continues to unfold.
Okay, let's begin by painting the scene. This all happened just yesterday, September 10th, 2025, at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. You need to picture a large white pen. It's usually a hub of student activity, apparently, pitched right there in the Sorensen Center courtyard. Approximately 3,000 people had gathered. They were there full of anticipation for the kickoff of Charlie Kirk's American Comeback Tour. And the tent itself, it was emblazoned with slogans like "The American Comeback" and "Prove Me Wrong," which really reflected his often confrontational style.
Yeah, and one detail that really stands out from the sources is the palpable tension that was already present before the event even started. You had fervent support for Kirk, absolutely, but there were also nearly 1,000 signatures on a petition trying to cancel the event. That speaks volumes, doesn't it, about the charged atmosphere he often cultivated. Even before the day's tragic events unfolded, it tells you this wasn't just a regular political rally. There was something else in the air.
And the moments leading up to the assassination itself, they paint such a chilling picture. Sources confirmed that about 20 minutes into his presentation, Kirk was engaged in a pointed exchange with someone in the audience. The topic: gun violence and mass shootings. The audience member asked about the number of mass shooters, and Kirk's final words, which have now been captured on video that's just tragically everywhere. His response was, "Counting or not counting gang violence?"
Right, and then at approximately 12:10 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, MDT, that debate was just irrevocably silenced. A single sharp pop rang out. The video footage, it's horrific. It showed Kirk jolting backward, clutching his neck, and then just a fountain of blood, as reports described it, pouring out. This wasn't an attack from inside the crowd. It was a sniper shot, fired from the roof of the Luce Center, which is over 100 yards away. Some reports even suggest maybe up to 200 yards. That chilling precision, it points directly to a calculated, premeditated act, not spontaneous.
The terror that followed immediately, it's almost unimaginable to think about. Stunned silence, apparently for just a second, then gasps, screams, then a panic stampede. People ducking for cover, scrambling over a nearby fountain, just fleeing in sheer terror. Eyewitness Ryan DeVries described it as a stampede rife with terror and panic. Another student, Sarah Haywood, gave this graphic account of blood just dumped from his neck. "I have never seen that much blood that fast." And Tanner Johnson, another student, mentioned having had active shooter training since elementary school, but admitted that in that moment, all of that went out of the window and everybody was running around trying to get out. That just highlights the raw human fear, doesn't it, when violence like this erupts so suddenly.
It really does. And what this tells us about the larger situation is how quickly even modern training, active shooter drills, can be completely overwhelmed by that raw human fear, especially in the face of something like a calculated public assassination. The chaos wasn't just physical, it was deeply, deeply psychological for everyone there.
Charlie Kirk was rushed to Timpanogos Regional Hospital. He was later pronounced dead there, and the news then just rippled across the nation, an immediate shockwave. President Donald Trump made the official announcement on Truth Social at 2:40 p.m. MDT, and by 5:40 p.m., the U.S. flag over the White House was lowered to half-staff. A truly somber day for America, a profound national loss, regardless of political views. Now, To really grasp the significance of this tragedy for our nation, for you listening, we need to understand the man at its center. Charlie Kirk was only 31. He wasn't your traditional politician, not in the elected sense, but he was this incredibly media-savvy activist who built a multi-million-dollar empire with his organization, Turning Point USA, or TPUSA as most people know it.
Yeah, his rise was quite remarkable, really rapid. He co-founded TPUSA back in 2012. He was just 18 years old. He leveraged early funding from conservative donors, people like Foster Fries were mentioned. And by 2024, the nonprofit was reporting revenues of $85 million. I mean, he was a force, almost from day one. He really worked to transform college campuses into these ideological battlegrounds and became a major, major voice in conservative media.
TPUSA's strategy, it was kind of brilliant in its simplicity, but also highly confrontational. You think of those prove me wrong tables they set up on campuses. They were specifically designed to create viral moments for social media, always casting Kirk as this fearless debater going into what he considered enemy territory. And his connection to Donald Trump, well, it was undeniable. He became known as a MAGA kingmaker, really effective at translating that populist message to a younger audience. President Trump himself actually publicly credited Kirk for his victory among young voters in 2024.
And a relevant point about his rhetoric, is how it evolved over time. As his platform grew, Kirk's statements became, well, increasingly inflammatory. There's no other word for it sometimes. He was a prominent promoter of misinformation around COVID-19 and vaccines. He amplified false claims about the 2020 election. He even organized buses of supporters for the January 6th rally in D.C. These weren't just minor comments. They were significant public endorsements of really controversial positions that resonated deeply with his base.
Absolutely. And his commentary grew more and more provocative across a whole range of social and cultural issues, too. He challenged established narratives on historical figures, calling George Floyd a scumbag, criticizing Martin Luther King Jr. as awful. He questioned landmark legislation like the Civil Rights Act of 1964, calling it a huge mistake. And he aggressively championed traditional gender roles, strongly opposed LGBTQ+ rights, and really embraced Christian nationalism. This consistent confrontational stance, it deeply defined his public persona. It's who he was in the public eye.
And that provocative stance, perhaps nowhere was it more evident than on the issue of gun rights. At a TPUSA event in 2023, he made that statement that's now being widely recirculated. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. That statement, especially now after his death, it became a definitive expression of his views. It speaks right to the core of his ideology, and it's stark.
So what does all this mean for his public presence, his day-to-day life?
Well, Kirk's confrontational style, it certainly generated immense success for him and his organization, but it also placed him in this state of perpetual high-profile conflict. His entire brand, his whole method of engagement, it required him to be physically present in these environments where opposition was often intense and often, quite personal. He sought it out, and that created a dangerous paradox, didn't it? His confrontational visibility, the thing that fueled his movement, it simultaneously amplified his personal risk. It turned his platform into, well, a literal target. He was a known, extremely polarizing figure who consistently and deliberately placed himself in unsecured open-air environments like that one at UVU. So his assassination, therefore, it doesn't feel like a random act. It feels like a tragic culmination of a political brand that really thrived on blurring that line between debate and danger. It made him a visible target in an increasingly charged environment.
Okay, let's turn our attention now to the assassination itself. The sources we have confirm it was a calculated, premeditated attack. This wasn't some crime of passion. It was an act executed with, frankly, chilling precision, aimed at a specific individual at a specific time.
Yeah, and a striking detail here involves the setting and the security, or lack thereof. The event was held in this open, terraced area right in the heart of the campus, easily accessible. Despite the crowd of 3,000 people and Kirk's highly controversial nature, the security seemed surprisingly light. Reports say only 6 university police officers, supplemented by Kirk's own private detail. But critically, as you mentioned earlier, no magnetometers, no bag checks. Students and the public could just walk right in.
Wow.
This lack of hardened security, despite the, well-documented controversy surrounding Kirk and the pushback against the event, it created a significant vulnerability, a real opening.
The investigation, as you'd expect, immediately became this complex multi-agency effort. You had UVU police, the local Orem Police Department, the Utah Department of Public Safety, DPS, and the FBI all involved. The campus was locked down, evacuated, standard procedure for such a grave threat.
But a critical challenge emerged, almost immediately.
Yeah.
The reliability of information in a crisis like this. The public communication from the authorities just descended into chaos, frankly. The university initially reported a suspect detained. And that was quickly walked back. Then we saw reports of 2 separate individuals detained and later released, neither apparently connected to the assassination. But probably the most damaging misstep came from FBI Director Kash Patel. He publicly announced on X, Twitter, that a suspect was in custody, only to have to retract that statement less than 2 hours later, saying the individual was released after interrogation.
Yeah. That series of premature announcements and, well, embarrassing retractions must have dealt a severe blow to the credibility of the investigation right in those crucial opening hours. Precisely when the public most needed clear, consistent information, it just left everyone wondering what was really going on.
Absolutely. And as of the latest reports we have, the shooter remains at large. A manhunt is ongoing. Authorities, including Utah Governor Spencer Cox and the Utah DPS, they've unequivocally labeled it a targeted attack and a political assassination. Even though they don't yet have a suspect or a declared motive, they're calling it what it appears to be.
And this failure, this inability of law enforcement to provide clear, consistent information, it created this information vacuum. And in America's hyper-partisan climate today, you know what happens next. That vacuum was instantly filled by partisan narratives, just accelerating the political polarization before solid facts could even emerge. It was just a dishearteningly rapid descent into political infighting during a moment of national tragedy. The assassination itself, though, sent immediate shockwaves across the country. And initially, maybe just for a moment, it created a very rare unified chorus of bipartisan condemnation.
It was notable, wasn't it? The sheer breadth of the outrage. You heard from President Trump, of course, calling Kirk the Great and even legendary. But you also heard from former President Joe Biden. He said there's no place in our country for this kind of violence. And former President Barack Obama called it despicable violence. Even former Presidents Bill Clinton and George W. Bush issued statements condemning it. Congressional leaders, Republican Speaker Mike Johnson, Democratic Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, they both condemned it. Governors like Gavin Newsom, too. That initial unity, it really did stand out.
Yeah, and even public figures who themselves had been victims of political violence. People like former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, who survived an assassination attempt, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, severely wounded in that shooting at the baseball practice, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the target of that kidnapping plot. They all expressed their horror and heartbreak. It just shows how deeply this resonated across the entire political spectrum, at least initially.
Initially is the key word there, unfortunately, because that surface-level consensus, it very quickly masked a powerful, almost reflexive instinct to immediately frame the tragedy within existing partisan narratives. President Trump, for instance, while he did call for unity, he also delivered an address from the Oval Office where he labeled Kirk a martyr for truth and freedom and explicitly blamed the radical left for creating a climate of terrorism.
Right, and that narrative was instantly amplified by conservative media and online influencers. You saw accounts like Libs of TikTok posting, in all caps, "This is war." Even a planned moment of silence in the U.S. House of Representatives reportedly devolved into a partisan shouting match. It's just a microcosm, isn't it, of the profound division gripping our nation, even in grief.
It really is. And in a broader context, this highlights the profound instability of our political culture, where even a shared moment of national horror is immediately, almost automatically, subsumed by the dynamics of polarization. It's a deeply concerning pattern. It hinders any collective grief or reflection, and it just pushes us further apart instead of bringing us together.
But amid all that political furor, we should acknowledge genuine acts of mourning did take place. Flags were at half-staff across the country. Vigils were held in Arizona and Utah, people gathering with candles and prayers, spontaneous gatherings outside the hospital where he died. These moments of quiet grief, they stood in such stark contrast to the political maneuvering. They showed the real human toll of this tragic event on the American people, beyond the politics. So, where does this leave us? What does this all mean for America's future? The assassination of Charlie Kirk, it didn't happen in a vacuum, we know that. It feels like the latest and maybe the most shocking event in a really troubling pattern of escalating political violence that seems to define this era of American public life.
You have to wonder why this one feels so different, so much more dangerous, perhaps. Experts are warning the country is in a very, very dangerous spot. That Kirk's murder could be a flashpoint for civil unrest. And the sources list other recent incidents just to remind ourselves. The 2024 assassination attempt on President Trump himself, the murder of a Democratic state lawmaker in Minnesota, the slaying of Israeli embassy staffers in D.C., an attack on the CDC headquarters, the firebombing of a parade out in Colorado. It shows the threat isn't confined to just one ideology. It feels like a breakdown across the board.
And many people immediately linked the nation's toxic political rhetoric to this violence. President Trump's assertion, for example, that comparing conservatives to Nazis was directly responsible for the terrorism, that's a clear example of leaders framing the violence within their own political narratives, assigning blame even as they condemn the act itself.
There's an interesting concept here called stochastic terrorism. It's worth mentioning. It suggests that while a public figure might not directly command violence, their persistent inflammatory rhetoric can make it statistically predictable, or at least more likely, that some radicalized individual will eventually act. The idea is the leader provides the justification, maybe identifies the targets implicitly or explicitly, and then some lone actor provides the action. It's a sobering thought in our current media environment where the connection between words and deeds seems increasingly fragile and direct.
And the role of social media here just cannot be overstated. Those graphic, unedited videos of Kirk actually being shot, they were instantly everywhere. On X, on TikTok, on Facebook, they spread like wildfire, amplifying the trauma and the shock value globally, instantaneously.
Stepping back, this feels like a fundamental shift from previous eras of political violence. It amplifies the trauma massively. It turns human tragedy into viral content, instantly consumable and shareable. And arguably, it desensitizes the public over time, feeding the very cycle of outrage and division that might have contributed to the attack in the first place. It's like a dangerous accelerant poured onto an already volatile situation here in the USA.
Kirk's death, it's already setting powerful forces in motion. President Trump immediately calling him a martyr for truth and freedom. That specific language, that narrative, it transforms a victim into a symbol. A death becomes a sacrifice. Grief turns into a call to action for the conservative movement. It's actively shaping his legacy, even in the immediate aftermath of the tragedy.
And that brings up the huge challenge of what happens now to Turning Point USA. The organization was so deeply intertwined with Kirk's personality, his relentless energy. It really was an extension of him. His absence creates a profound crisis for them. The question of succession is paramount. Will it fracture? Or perhaps will it find a new, unifying purpose through his martyrdom? Could it solidify his legacy in a different, perhaps even more potent way? That remains to be seen.
This assassination, it forces really urgent and uncomfortable questions upon all of us in the United States. How can public figures possibly be protected in an environment filled with such intense political hatred, rampant online radicalization, and, let's be frank, the easy availability of high-powered firearms capable of making a shot like that? The light security at UVU, looking back now, it just seems tragically naive, doesn't it?
It does. And the likely outcome, unfortunately, will probably be a hardening of security at all political events across the board. That could fundamentally change the nature of public discourse, creating even greater distance between politicians and the citizens they represent. It might be a necessary precaution, perhaps, but it's one that definitely impacts the very accessibility of our democratic process. It alters how we engage with our leaders.
And more broadly, the biggest question may be, is there a path back from the brink for our nation? The immediate, almost reflexive retreat into partisan camps following this assassination offers very little hope right now for national unity or even just quiet reflection. It feels like we're caught in this repeating loop of division.
Yeah, the larger implication seems to be that this event wasn't a catalyst for de-escalation. Not at all. It was instantly absorbed into the existing conflict, just more fuel for the fire. And that points perhaps to a political system that has lost its capacity for self-correction, which is a truly unsettling thought for the future of American politics and for the country itself.
That single shot that killed Charlie Kirk, it was more than just the end of a life. It feels like an echo of a larger national unraveling. It forces us as a nation, all of us, to confront these terrifying and unavoidable questions about what our future holds when political dialogue gets replaced by demonization, and where, for some, violence seems to be becoming an accepted, almost expected feature of public life. We invite you, our listeners, to consider these implications, to seek understanding in this deeply challenging time, and to continue to engage thoughtfully with the complex issues facing our country. It feels more important now than ever.